When Morgan Freeman picked up a letter from President Ibrahim Traoré, no one expected what came next. As he read the powerful words aloud, Freeman's legendary voice began to tremble and his eyes welled up with tears. The message, deeply personal, heartfelt, and unforgettable, left him choked up in front of millions. This emotional moment is more than a letter. It's a timeless reminder of the power of truth, dignity, and human connection. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in Los Angeles. The sun filtered softly through the blinds of Morgan Freeman's quiet home. He was sipping his morning tea, reading scripts and newspapers as usual, when his assistant, Rachel, walked in, holding a thick envelope. "There's a letter for you, Mr. Freeman," she said, "from Africa. It's marked confidential." Morgan raised an eyebrow. The envelope bore the seal of Burkina Faso. Gently, he took it in his hands. It felt heavier than paper, like it carried something, weightier than ink. He looked at the signature. President Ibrahim Traoré. A chill passed over him, not out of fear, but out of respect. He knew of Trop young, courageous, and bold. But why write to him? A Hollywood actor. He hadn't been politically active in years. He placed the letter on the table, untouched. Then he stood and walked to the window, staring out in silence. Something about this felt different, as though whatever lay inside wasn't just for him, but for the world. That morning, he didn't open it, not yet. He waited, and the world unknowingly held its breath with him. It wasn't until later that evening that Morgan finally sat down, turned on a small lamp by his reading chair, and opened the envelope. Inside was a neatly folded letter on thick parchment, handwritten. The ink was dark and steady. The words began, simply to the voice of the world. "I write you not as a president, but as a son of Africa, to a man who has carried our pain, dreams, and dignity in his voice." Morgan blinked. Already his throat tightened. He hadn't even reached the second paragraph. He cleared his voice, stood, and called Rachel. "Set up a camera," he said. "I want to read this out loud. The world needs to hear this exactly as it was written." Rachel, curious and slightly emotional herself, prepared a quiet space. No music, no background, just Morgan, a single light, and the letter. When the recording started, he took a deep breath and began to read. And with each word, something inside him began to unravel. The recording had only just started. Morgan's deep, steady voice filled the room. "You taught us dignity, Mr. Freeman, long before you knew our names." As he read on, his voice, usually calm and unshakable, began to slow. His fingers trembled slightly. He paused. There was a line that struck like thunder. "You've narrated our struggle, even when we had no microphones. And today I write not just to thank you, but to remind the world that dignity has a voice, and it sounds like yours." He tried to go on, but something caught in his throat. Rachel Filman didn't say a word. The silence was heavy, like a curtain. Falling slowly across the room, Morgan took off his glasses and wiped his eyes. I wasn't ready for this," he whispered. "This wasn't a speech. This was a mirror. A letter that saw past the actor, past the legend, into the human being." He looked at the camera, and for the first time in years, Morgan Freeman cried on film, and the letter was far from over. Morgan sat there, the letter shaking slightly in his hand. His voice had cracked, and the camera caught every pause, every breath he struggled to take. "We are not born free," the letter continued. "But we can choose to live free and to fight so our children do not inherit chains." He stopped again, pressing the bridge of his nose as tears rolled slowly down. Rachel, holding the camera steady, swallowed. Hard she had never seen him like this, he whispered. "This young man, this president, he writes as though he's speaking straight into my soul." The room was silent, except for Morgan's heavy breaths. The letter wasn't just paper. It was truth. It was raw. It was history, folded into words. And even though only one person was in the room with him, the weight of millions listening seemed to press in already. Morgan looked at the camera, his eyes red. The world needs to hear this whole letter. Then, with trembling hands, he turned the page and continued. Morgan's voice, though shaky, grew steadier as he read on. "Mr. Freeman, I write to remind you that the voices of men like you have carried the dignity of our people across oceans. You showed the world we were not shadows, but light." Those words pulled Morgan backward in time. He remembered the early days in Mississippi when he was a boy with big dreams but few opportunities. He remembered watching injustice firsthand, the weight of silence pressing down on entire communities. Now here was a president from Africa acknowledging those struggles, tying them to the struggles of his own people. Morgan cleared his throat and continued reading. "I want you to know, sir, that your voice gave courage to generations who may never meet you, but who rise each day believing in their worth." A tear slipped down his cheek. This wasn't just praise. It was a bridge connecting continents, struggles, and hearts. Rachel whispered, "Morgan, this is history." And deep inside, he knew she was right. Morgan reached a line that broke something inside him. "I am young, yet I carry the weight of millions. And when I feel weary, I think of voices like yours reminding me that truth cannot be silenced and dignity cannot be stolen." His voice faltered again. He set the letter down, pressing a hand to his chest. His shoulders shook. For a long moment, he couldn't go on. The legendary calm, the deep, steady tone, the world adored, gone. What remained was a man stripped to his most human form. Rachel put the camera down gently and asked, "Do you want to stop?" He shook his head, wiping his tears. "No," he whispered. "If he had the courage to write this, then I must have the courage to read it." He lifted the letter again. His fingers trembled. His lips moved silently before he spoke the next line aloud. And when he did, his voice carried the weight of both pain and pride. The world hadn't yet seen it, but this letter was about to change. More than just Morgan Freeman. Morgan's hands shook as he unfolded the next page. The words seemed almost too heavy to carry. "Mr. Freeman, we may live on different continents, yet the chains of yesterday link us still. My people's cries are echoes of your people's past." Morgan's voice broke as he read. His deep tone, once unshakable, now trembled. Rachel wiped her own eyes quietly, the camera still rolling. She whispered, "The world needs this." Morgan nodded faintly. Yes, they must hear it. For the first time in decades, he felt like a child again, listening to his grandmother speak about resilience, about dignity, about never letting the world steal your soul. This letter, it wasn't just words. It was a mirror reflecting back the struggles of generations. He whispered almost to himself, "This young man, he carries the weight of history on his shoulders." Then he lifted his chin and kept reading, his tears flowing freely. Now the next words felt like a hand reaching through time. "When I stand before my people, I carry the voices of ancestors who endured storms. And in your films, in your voice, I hear those same ancestors reminding us to never bow." Morgan closed his eyes for a second. He remembered playing Mandela, the weight of portraying a man who had carried a nation's dream. He remembered the letters from young Africans who said his roles gave them hope. Now, here was a president confirming what Morgan had long wondered. Did his voice truly matter? The answer was in front of him. Rachel sniffled quietly, tears streaking her cheeks. Morgan spoke softly into the silence. "It's as though he's writing, not just to me, but to every soul who's ever doubted their worth." The bond between them, though they had never met, felt real, alive, unbreakable, and the world was about to witness it. Morgan turned the page, but his composure was hanging by a thread. "Sir, the world may applaud your talent, but I write to honor your humanity because it is not your fame that inspires us. Is your courage to tell our truth." The words pierced through him. He dropped the letter for a moment, covering his face with his hand. His shoulders shook as sobs broke free, raw, unhidden. Rachel froze, unsure whether to comfort him or keep filming. Finally, she whispered, "Morgan, you don't have to keep going." But he shook his head, his voice. And as he continued, his legendary voice carried not the strength the world expected, but the vulnerability it needed. The silence around him felt sacred. The moment was no longer about a letter. It was about truth. And truth at that moment was breaking him wide open. He steadied his voice, but the next line struck like thunder. "If we forget the pain of our ancestors, we risk betraying the children yet unborn." The room grew impossibly still. Morgan's breath caught, his chest tightening as memories of civil rights marches, news footage of injustice, and his own childhood. Struggles surged back. Rachel whispered, "Morgan, That's powerful." He nodded slowly, his voice breaking. "This young man understands. He carries burdens we thought only our own leaders bore. Didn't just demand reflection, they demanded responsibility," Morgan continued, but his voice cracked like fragile glass. "Mr. Freeman, I do not write to flatter you. I write because your life has shown us that dignity is not given. It is chosen again and again, even when the world tries to strip it away." The tears that streamed down his cheeks were no longer quiet. He wept openly, shoulders trembling under the invisible weight of decades. Rachel reached for his arm, whispering, "It's okay to cry. The world needs to see this." Morgan nodded faintly. "This is not just a letter. It's a call to every soul who dares to hope." He felt the pain of his ancestors, the struggles of today, and the uncertain hope of tomorrow collide inside him. The letter wasn't about him alone. It was about all of them, everyone who ever wondered if their suffering had meaning. The next words blurred through Morgan's tears, but he pressed on. "One day, I hope we will meet, not as a president and an actor, but as two men, sons of the same struggle, guardians of the same dream." The thought of meeting Ibrahim Traoré wasn't about fame or politics. It was about connection, about bridging oceans of history with a single handshake. Rachel sobbed quietly behind the camera. She whispered, "Morgan, you're giving the world a gift by reading this." Morgan looked straight into the lens, his eyes red but full of fire. But because he was standing in the presence of something greater than himself, and the world watching would feel it too. Morgan tried to steady his breathing, but the letter had more to reveal. "Mr. Freeman, sacrifice. You have carried it with grace." His lips quivered as he read the final word. Rachel, sitting just off camera, was sobbing silently now. "Morgan, he wrote this for the world, not just for you." Morgan placed the letter on his lap, his fingers trembling. "Rachel, this young man carries the weight of nations, and still he finds the strength to see others." He wiped his tears, but they kept coming, unstoppable, like a river breaking its dam. For once, Morgan Freeman, the voice of calm, wisdom, and control, was undone, and the world would soon see it. Morgan picked the letter back up, determined to finish. "I do not seek recognition, Mr. Freeman. I seek a world where children in Burkina Faso, in America, in every corner of the earth, can look up and believe that truth still lives." The words stung with truth. Morgan felt the weight of millions of eyes. Future generations, depending on men like Ibrahim, true to hold the line of dignity. He whispered, almost as if speaking to the letter itself, "Truth still lives. Yes, it does." The silence in the room felt holy. Rachel finally asked, "Do you think people will understand the depth of this lens? If they don't, then we must help them, because this is not just a letter. It is a mirror for all of us." And in that moment, Morgan knew this letter would not only move hearts, it would demand action. Morgan's trembling hands folded the letter slowly, almost reverently, as though it were a sacred text. "Rachel," he whispered, "the world needs to hear this exactly as it is. Share it raw. Just you, the letter, and the truth." Morgan took a deep breath, his eyes swollen but shining. Rachel hid stop on the camera, but the room stayed heavy with emotion. Morgan sat in silence, staring at the folded paper in his hands. It felt like more than ink on a page. It felt like a bridge between two men, two nations, two histories bound. By a single hope, the letter had stripped him bare. And soon, it would strip the world bare, too. The video went live at 7 a.m. sharp. No dramatic edits, no music, just Morgan Freeman seated in a simple room, holding a letter with trembling hands. Within minutes, the internet reacted. Another, "This isn't just a letter, it's a wake-up call." Across continents, the video was shared in WhatsApp groups, tweeted by journalists, and posted on classroom boards. A teacher in Ghana paused her lesson and played the video to her students. A young boy in Brazil wiped tears from his eyes and whispered, "This is real." In the quiet corners of the world, hearts were being cracked open, not by violence, not by politics, but by one man's truth and another man's tears. President Ibrahim Traoré hadn't asked for attention. He hadn't even intended the letter to go public. But it did, and it reached where no speech or summit ever could. The power of his words was no longer just between him and Morgan. It now belonged to everyone. And it was only just beginning. 3 days after the video dropped, something happened no one expected. From Sierra Leone to Sweden, people began writing their own letters to leaders, to artists, to parents, to strangers. "Dear President Traoré," many began, "us how to feel again." Morgan Freeman released a follow-up video. This time, he wasn't crying. He was smiling softly. They echo? In a world often distracted by noise, President Traoré had reminded us of the strength found in stillness, the courage to say what others won't, the humanity we all forget when the world moves too fast. And Oprah, she did a full segment titled "The Letter That Brought the World Together." With her voice still thick with emotion, she said this wasn't about fame. This was about a man, a leader with nothing but sincerity in his heart. And that is everything. Morgan Freeman, standing before the United Nations a week later, held the letter one more time. Not as an actor, not as a celebrity, but as a man. "This letter didn't just touch me," he said, "it awakened me." President Ibrahim Traoré reminded us that dignity is not a gift for the powerful. Faso, President Traoré, watched the live stream from a quiet room. He whispered to his aide, "If even one person decides to act with more kindness because of this, then it was worth writing." And it was. Now, dear viewer, if this story moved you, if you felt the lump in your throat, the sting in your eyes, then don't scroll away quietly. Like this video to show the world we still believe in dignity. I believe in truth, and subscribe. Now, because this channel is where emotion meets meaning and where every story might just change a life. Thank you for watching.